Okay, are we good to go?
Yep, ready now, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the West Northamptonshire Shadow Executive. Apologies for non-attendance.
None received, Chair.
Sorry, James, you look like you were going to speak.
No, sorry, I think Alex and I were both covering the same ground.
Oh, okay. And I did get a text from Matt Colby to say he was coming on from another meeting, so we'll probably get here shortly. Notification to request to address the meeting?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Members' declarations of interest? Members of anything to declare? None. Minutes of the last meeting have been circulated. Is there anything to note? I'm going on the pack here. So page 1, which finishes with program director's update. Page 2, which finishes by lower overall receipt. Page 3, which finishes with paragraph West Northampton's customer services opening hours. Page 4, which finishes with exempt items, there were none. Are members content that these are a true and accurate record? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Then we'll move on to announcements. Well, I think sort of the standing announcement as we are rapidly approaching vesting day. We have 128 calendar days, I think, from today, or probably 127 if you discount today, as it's now 6 o'clock, and 90 working days. That's official working days. That's assuming that Saturdays and Sundays aren't working days, but I know for many of them the week just runs from one to the other. So we don't have a lot of time to get things done, but we are making reasonable progress. I think we had a good session with the LGA, some peers, and it was quite interesting last week when it gave us a little bit of confidence that it didn't see any glaring gaps in our readiness and our preparedness, but we cannot slack. Program update. I was automatically programmed to say Paul, but that'll be Jane. Sorry. Apologies, Jane.
It's okay, I'm the new Paul. So I believe there's going to be some slides put up on the screen for me. I'm just waiting for. Okay, if you could go down to slide 3, please. Just make sure everybody can see that. Okay, so just to talk through the programme status, I'm not going to concentrate on Place North and West because they're both green. The areas that I just wanted to draw your attention to is firstly finance. It's moved from green to amber this month, mainly because there's a heavy reliance on SMEs. And given the amount of work that's having to be done on various other areas of finance, there's a big draw on their time. So it's been marked as amber. We are working through that with sovereign councils to make sure we have the right capacity, but it will remain amber as long as we've got concerns in that area. With corporate, that remains amber, mainly around the HR work. We are going through tier 1 to 3 at the moment, and there are various areas of discussion with unions at the moment. So we're just making sure that that stays at amber while that work is continuing, because it's an area that we'd want to remain focused on, and there are some places that we need to keep an eye on. With children's, that's amber as well. So Liz has stepped down from the programme. The Children's Trust has gone live since the last update, so that's good news all round. And Kathy Hadley, as the appointed as joint DCS, has actually taken over now from Liz, so that she will oversee the programme both on the education side and the ICF element as well from there. And as you can see, adults, ICT and customer and digital are all green, so nothing to report on those. If you go to the next slide, please. So there are some changes for the proposed governance structure due to splitting now more towards the west and north in the programme terms, although there is a very central part to that, which we talk through later. The program management, there's further work to align the program management and resources to make sure the split of the program is in the right place. We've done a lot of work around that, and actually we are working jointly with myself and Lisa, who's the North Transformation Director, to ensure that we have, where we're not doing pay and rations management, we've got dotted line management to us, and we're discussing everything to make sure it's aligned on those central parts of the program, but each of us are taking control of the west and north parts in terms of place. The arrangements also will be talked through later in the governance part. Again, there's a new way of dealing with that, so that will be talked through then. And I've been through a heavy induction and handover to make sure that all of the information has been given to me by Paul, and been through with every programme at least an hour to an hour and a half overview, along with individual meetings with all the programme managers. Okay, so if you can move on to the next bit. I think it then goes to George's part, day one assurance.
Thanks, Jane. Just a reminder, this slide is just highlighting the amount of individual areas that we are looking at as part of day one assurance, as you can see there. But if we move on to the next slide, I'll just focus on these key areas. So with regards to the unitary level, you can see business IT systems was reporting it as an area of concern for us. However, I'm pleased to say that in response to this, work is well underway now to develop a data sharing agreement between both unitary authorities for day one onwards. And alongside this, we're also looking at IT systems which are being reviewed to ascertain the types of data that they hold. We're also, because of the size of both areas, adults and children's systems are being given priority with regards to the amount of data that both areas do hold. Turning to those in amber, you've got a paper on the agenda a bit later with regards to staffing structures. I'm pleased to say that progress is being made around DBS checking. And we've got timelines in place for the remaining areas as well. So whilst amber, good progress is being made in all of these. And I think on the next slide, I think in terms of readiness, we're okay at the moment with those, although just to assure exec members, we have now started a regular Monday day one service readiness with each of the key programs, and we've already looked at, for example, corporate services, education and disaggregation, to name but a few. But other than that, I'll hand back to Jane. Thank you.
Let me just find my mute button. Okay. Is there another slide after that? Okay. If you could carry on, sorry, the next one again. Okay, so this is the change management element. So we've been working basically to ensure that all of our staff that are involved in this process are supported all the way through this. So there's been some really good work across adults who have come very far forward in implementing their new ways of working. The change management team have been working to ensure that any staff who have queries are answered. It launched on the 19th of October. And there's some impact and feedback coming through. So the case study video with adult social care change was about an experience that was shown to staff, basically to walk people through it. The trade union had positive feedback from the staff, so that was a really good indication that the management of the change process was good. And we've got a good quote there from a user to say, "You've done more for me in a week than others have done in years." Okay, if you could move on to the next one. Again, Children's Trust, really good news, went live on 1st of November. New website launched. The Ofsted inspection is now complete. You've got a new chief exec coming and board of directors. There's new email addresses and operationally no step change. So there's a number of things that have happened there, basically from the go live activities, and we've not had any major issues from that point. Okay, move on to the next one. And MS3, I can never say that, MS365 rollout is going really well. So if you look at the numbers down in the bottom left-hand corner, that is a large scale of information that's been migrated, and very, very small portion of it failed due to size or error rate of 0.005%, which is tiny compared to the size of the piece of work that was still happening. That happened. And you've still got a number that are still to complete, but the ones that have gone so far have gone well. There's communication to the change champions within the organisation, and it starts 10 days in advance of the launch in any of those organisations. So the approach clearly sets out the call to action tasks that are required from staff so that they know ahead of time what they need to do. So we've been trying to really get under the skin of what are the things that the staff need to know before anything goes live to make sure they have all the information. And that's continued work that we're doing throughout the programme to get things ready and information sheets ready for the staff to ensure that they're fully sighted and fully engaged. Okay, if we move on. And the Eclipse is nearly there. So Adults Go Live is the 7th of December 2020. We've got 77 Eclipse super users that are recruited. So those are the people who will learn a bit more so that they can help and coach others. So that's a really good way of peer support running through the organisation. And hopefully it's a culture that we're looking to set going forward. Training for the super users commenced on the 27th of October. And all staff training began yesterday, actually. So that should be moving forward. Okay. And just the change champion analysis. We've spent a lot of time talking around the gaps on this. I think we've recruited to the levels that we actually need at the moment, although there are some gaps showing. Some of those are from resignations, and actually it's working very well across the change champions to cover services that they might not cover in a different way, and change managers are making sure that they get right down into the detail where they haven't got those change champions in place. So but there's been a really good movement on the recruitment side of that. Okay, next one. And again, this talks about the numbers that we've moved forward. So we've got 374 change champions across the county, which is a really good number of people putting themselves forward and taking on almost the extra responsibility of getting information through to their colleagues across the organisation. Okay, thank you. Okay, and comms and engagement. So there's been some good work again on comms and engagement. So we've got a live Q&A session with Teresa and the Change Champions on the 12th of November. Again, really good feedback from the staff on that. They like seeing the leadership live, and they like to be able to ask questions on the spot, which gives them reassurance that we are able to answer the things that they need to know, that we're not just having to go away and look at some of the questions that are being asked. PLACE programme published bite-sized work stream specific videos. So as you know, the PLACE programme has a wide number of work streams within it. So those videos are really helpful to those people or services wanting to know a bit more. A micro learning video with Martin Cockram. So we've been doing much smaller micro videos on specialist subjects almost for staff to view. And basically those have gone well and they've been well received and well viewed. And PLACE Space was launched as a single point of programme information. So that was allowed people in PLACE programme to have a look at all of that information in one space. And then collaborative working with the ERP project team to identify development synergies. So one of the things, again, we're looking at is the interdependencies and making sure that across the programme, we are picking up the impact from one programme milestone to another programme milestone to make sure that we're clear on how they interact. Okay. And there's a large list of recent activity there. I'm not going to run through it all because I'm sure you've all seen it in the pack, but there's a lot of work going on with comms and communication, task and finish groups, iteration of new authority logos, which you'll see come through today. So that work's coming to fruition. Staff and member bulletins with survey feedback is hopefully you're all seeing now. And if you've got any feedback on that, then again, it would be good to have it so we can always keep improving those. Supported on the MS365 rollout, which is massively important to ensure that technology is in the right space, and shared a new intro blog from Rob, which is great. So in the North, they've had that through, and then we're working on videos for Anna and Rob. So we're really getting those chief execs to bring some information through, and so the staff can get to know them in person. And we've got a good few next steps there. So I'm going to have my work cut out really alongside Lisa and making sure lots of those go to where they need to be. Okay, thank you. Finance.
Okay, thank you. Well, I noticed a few hands going up there. I did notice Danielle wanted to ask a question, and I saw Fiona had something to say as well. So I'll bring in the non-cabinet colleagues first, and then we can take any concerns as well into any discussion. Danielle?
Lovely, thank you very much. And thank you for allowing me to speak. I didn't know whether you wanted me to tell you beforehand, but anyway, thank you. First of all, can I just say, I really, really appreciate the massive amount of work that's gone on, and it's gathering pace, isn't it? So congratulations to all the staff that are leading on this huge, huge endeavour. And it's very plain to see the quality of the work as well as the quantity. So thank you to everybody. The report highlights rightly concerns as well, and I think that's right. I think we need to see the good stuff, but we need to know what the concerns are. There are concerns around finance, and I've got a concern, speaking as a borough councillor as well as a county councillor. It seems really obvious to me that we're lacking capacity in finance, and I think our colleagues are under the most enormous amount of pressure. And of course, the finance is, you know, the bedrock on which everything else sits. So my question really is, what are we doing about the capacity issues? And then we've got issues around audit, certainly at the borough. And that's not even the responsibility of the present administration in lots of ways, or the present staff team. There are historic reasons why we've got issues around audit, but I'm just wondering what's going to happen if the budgets aren't brought in and signed off. How is that going to impact on the budget setting process for the West North Hants Authority? So those are the questions around that. But with adults, can I just say what an absolute delight it is to hear that the work that's been going on in adults is having a really good impact and effect. And I've heard that from staff as well. So I'm absolutely delighted about that. I'm a little bit more concerned about what's happening in terms of monitoring the quality of work in some of our residential placements. And I will share those concerns appropriately with the director, but I just wonder what the capacity is in the service to actually monitor for quality in what's going on. I'm very curious about what's happened to Newton Europe, so if somebody could give us an update about that, that would be good. With the Children's Trust going live, it's only gone live for 3 weeks, but I'm pleased to hear that went well. We've just had an Ofsted inspection, so I'm a little bit concerned that hasn't been released into the public domain and the members haven't been briefed about that yet. And then the other issue I just wanted to raise, I'm sure there's an answer to this, is about at which point will we have residents' engagement with what's going on? Because a lot of residents still don't really understand what to expect, or even that there are big changes afoot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure people could pick some of these bits and pieces up. Fiona, I know you asked on the chat a question around what was the issues that were keeping children amber. Do you want to do that, and then we can get sort of...
I can also answer Daniel's question about the Ofsted report.
Crack on, if you can answer, even better. I see Teresa's chomping at the bit there.
Sorry. Well, she's used to me doing this, so I apologise. We haven't actually had the official report yet. I think it's due on the 4th or 5th of December. Ofsted will publish it themselves. It won't come to us first in that way. They just publish it out into the ether. So everybody will know at the same time what their report is once their official report is released into the public. No, I just wanted to ask what specific issues there were around children's that would keep it still being amber as opposed to green.
Okay, so in terms of the programme, and I'm sure Teresa will answer some of the other stuff in the general stuff. In terms of the programme, this is last month's reporting. So the amber was set prior to the Children's Trust going live. So up until that point, there was some stuff that we were still working on that could have gone, you know, into a problem area. So we highlight it to keep an eye on it. So that's why that was amber at last month. I don't know this month's figures yet or what the RAG rating is, but you will see that in the next month. So that was the reasons why it was amber for this stage. Teresa,
Thank you.
And so Adam and then Matt, or does Teresa want to come in now?
Yes,
Right.
if I could please, Chair, just to
Yeah,
respond
crack
to
on.
some of the questions, that would be great. Yes, thank you, Fiona, for that. I can confirm we haven't had the letter. When we will, it'll go into the public domain. In terms of the amber, the Children's Trust has gone live, but we're in stabilisation period now. So the next 3 months will be the stabilisation, where there's a lot of work to be done. So you still might see some ambers around that till that work is done. And then we're in the transition period up till the 1st of April, because we need to finish the work off whilst we're doing stabilisation. Some of the things that we didn't get to complete before go live. And then we need to transition it into the 2 unitaries. So there's still quite a lot of work to be done. It's gone live without a hitch, I'm pleased to say, and it's been a really positive couple of weeks. I'm touching wood, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I wouldn't want anyone to think we're finished. We're not. We still have a lot to do. I know Anna wants to respond on the adults question as well, and I'll just hand over to Anna. Thank you.
Okay. So before you do, Matt or Adam, do you want to ask about adults or something else?
My question was on children's.
Okay, fine. I know we can come back to that. And
mine was just a comment, Chair. So I'm happy.
All right. Well, we let Anna.
Through you, Chair. There was an
Where
indication from Councillor Larratt earlier.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see Phil's. Sorry, Phil. Where are you? Well, can we let Anna in and then I'll come back to you. I'll just make a note.
Okay. So
Anna Eve, where are you?
I'm here.
There you are.
So just to say, in terms of residential quality monitoring, there's been no drop-off in our quality monitoring as part of COVID and everything else that's going on. So we are still doing all the monitoring work we're still tracking all requests, and we're working probably more closely in many ways with health to do joint monitoring visits whenever we get a concern raised. So I had a full report again this morning to make sure that was still the case, and there's no sort of rising concern. So I am reassured that we're doing everything we normally do. There's no drop off in the teams and no shortage in staff either. So I think we can feel confident about that. Obviously, homes are under a lot of pressure at the moment. That's one of the reasons we're offering them all the extra support, and we're doing regular call rounds and checks and picking up any patient issues or discharge issues or any concerns the homes have. On the Newton Europe stuff, so Newton Europe is still here and actively progressing with us. The new Tom model, that's going very well. So we're on target at the end of the 18 months to hit the £15 million saving. In year, obviously we've had some impact of COVID, which caused some slippage in year, but we look like we will deliver on this year's forecast, probably overperform on that. But overall, over the 14 months, we will complete that saving. More to the point is staff are really enjoying that way of working. We are managing generally to clear everything at the front door when we get it. So we've got less backlogs, less pending lists, one or two areas of concern, and a few little areas where the practicalities of new buildings and new IT has been a bit of a challenge, but generally really good feedback from the public and partners and staff. So progressing well and all green as far as the programme is concerned, Councillor Stone. Thank you.
And just before I move on to Matt, Phil, and Adam, Phil, and Matt, can I just thank you, Danielle, for your comments. It was good to see that we've got some positive comments from you, and you've acknowledged the work that's going on. That it's quite good that we're all coming together on the one thing, and I think we all share that very balanced approach. We acknowledge good work, and we recognise that we're not being complacent, and there's being very clear about where we need to keep our focus. Adam, you've been waiting a while. Apologies.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Just on the issue of children's, I appreciate that reports will continue to go to Cabinet at NCC regarding the transition, and that the report that we're discussing at the moment is a high-level oversight of the programme work as a whole. However, I would be keen moving forward to have more detailed reports on the Children's Trust issue and the transition into unitary. I feel it's such an important issue that it's not one that we can afford to lose sight of and indeed lose public scrutiny of. It's something that we have to be absolutely eagle-eyed about. My question really is, Teresa's already mentioned that we're in a 3-month stabilisation period. What are the key milestones between now and unitary in terms of the Children's Trust? What operational changes can we expect to see along the way, and how will we be ensuring that councillors maintain oversight both at NCC and within the shadow executive, please?
Chair, can I respond to that?
Of course you can. But just before you do, I think one of the things I have a meeting coming up very shortly with the new chief, Colin, and we do have scheduled meetings penciled in also with the interim chair, and probably when we get an announcement on a new chair, I'll keep those going. Myself and Russell as the leader of the North. So, you know, I think we're all keeping an eye very closely to make sure that carries through. And I think as well as this, like keeping it probably on constant amber, like we're doing with, for instance, IT or finance, where we're not actually going to ever turn it green. So it'll always have that scrutiny, as probably, you know, saying we'll keep it amber, so we're always having eyes on it, all part of the process, but not the whole process. Teresa, do you want to add to that?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just to say that the milestones are set out in a clear roadmap between now and the 1st of April. There's a programme board meeting actually on Thursday this week, which is chaired by Andrew Christie, the Commissioner, and that will oversee the programme delivery till the end of this year. Within the new governance regime, there is a strategic board, which is chaired by Fiona, Councillor Baker, as the chair, who will oversee the contract delivery, and that will meet monthly. That board also has Wendy Brackenbury from the North, who sits on that board as well. So that makes sure that both West and North are covered in terms of insight and political input, but it also covers NCC as well during that period of time. So there's very good coverage. There's also an improvement board, which has been going for some time now. I set it up originally, and then Andrew Christie took over chairing that. That continues, and that meets on Thursday morning this week as well. And the leader and Councillor Baker both attend that, and Wendy Brackenbury as well. So there's very good political oversight across Children's, and the new governance arrangements allow for that as well. And there's some key pieces of work, and you asked about that, between now and April, but nothing that would cause us any concern. It's mostly administrative work that wasn't done before go live. So it's mostly around administrative aspects of the process.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Phil and then Matt.
It's all right, Ian. Sorry, Chair. I did put my hand up. The query was subsequently answered. So.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, just very briefly, we've moved on now, but I was just going to comment and support what Jane and Anna said about adult social care and the way things are moving on there. And it is really exciting, and there's a lot of transformational work that can carry right on into the future. 2 new unitaries that will not only give better financial outcomes, but better outcomes for the residents as well. So there's some really good stuff going on there that I'm happy to support.
Great. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you again. A very brief comment. Just to answer, Councillor Stone asked, how are we alerting residents on what's coming from after April? And just to let you know, as part of the comms plan, there's a very significant sort of day one readiness campaign to get messages out to residents, and that will be very thoroughly covered. And in due course, we're off to overview and scrutiny just to run the plan past them to get their sort of independent insight into any aspects we may have missed. But that's a really important consideration that the comms function is working on. Thank you.
Good. So all hands are Right, Diane. Anything else before we move on?
I did raise questions about finance,
Sorry.
Chair.
Finance. Well, I did notice that the next slide said finance. Audra, do you want to pick that up? And if Audra doesn't cover it when she comes to her bit, or you were talking about financial capacity, I don't know whether that's for Audra or for Martin or for Teresa or for everyone, but sorry. So the financial capacity question, who wants to deal with that? I see Martin's leaning forward like a man ready to.
It should be Martin.
I'm happy to deal with that, Chair.
Oh.
Well, it depends
on
whether
it's finance. Say something.
Okay, it depends on whether it's finance capacity within the programme, which is Martin, or finance capacity currently. And I know Councillor Stone raised both. So Martin might want to do one bit and I can do the other.
So, thank you, Chair. Finance capacity in the programme. So, yes, it's highlighted as amber at this point in time. It is, people are stretched and we've got an understanding of that. It's reported, the actual capacity is reported through to the Finance Board, which meets on a regular basis. And that's where we monitor it and have a look at it. And if we need to escalate that and bring more resource in, that's where we manage that whole process. So that's where we provide that monitoring in relation to keeping a close eye on the overall capacity for finance. You asked a question about the impact of the audit. And if we look at the different sovereign councils, some of those have audits that are still open from 1819, 1920, and all of them will have accounts open from 2021. And that will run into the creation of the new authorities. So if we look at the current financial year, those accounts won't, as an example, those accounts won't be closed down until we get into 21-22, which is when the new authority is set up. And so therefore, we will have set a budget by then. So whilst we are pushing hard to try and make sure we get all of the accounts closed down for the sovereigns for all of the different years that are outstanding, it doesn't hold up or impact on the budget in any way. We'd still be able to set the budget. It would just need to be managed through West Northamptonshire once West Northamptonshire is in place. And as I say, the example to use there is 2021, because actually we won't officially close those accounts down until partway through 21-22. So that will be an overhang into the start of West Northamptonshire. So hopefully that picks up on the points that you raised there in relation to the aspects that I could respond to. I don't know if Teresa wants to add anything to that.
Martin, that was very comprehensive. The only thing I would add is if it's current capacity within current sovereign bodies, we're always willing to help each other. And as chief execs, we always talk to each other, and we know that that offer is there always. If you're struggling, we do ask for support across the piece, and we have done that in the past as well where necessary. So, or we can backfill or find resource if it's not available across the 8 authorities. So I wouldn't want to see anybody struggling, and I know colleagues wouldn't want to see us struggle either.
Thank you for that.
Chair, can I just get a bit of clarification from you, Danielle? When you say the shadow portfolio holder, do you mean the opposition, or do you mean the person in the shadow authority?
Shadow one.
Yeah, so it's the opposition. Yeah, okay,
yes.
Yeah. That's yeah.
Could I just ask,
shadow.
Chair, in relation to the answers on finance? Thank you for those answers. How is that? I'm still confused. If all the budgets aren't closed down, that must surely have an impact on our opening balances and our understanding of the budget going forward. I don't understand that.
I think there's, through you, Chair, I think there's 2 different issues in play here. One is the technical closing down of the accounts, and that will continue into when the new authority is set up. It means that not all of the issues will be resolved by the time we get there. So, for example, if we look at earmarked reserves or general fund balances, we won't have a final position to know what the opening balances are for West Northamptonshire. And we just have to accept that and understand that. That doesn't stop us setting the budget. So setting the budget is a different process when we're looking at the estimated cost of providing the services for next year, and that isn't dependent on the accounts being closed. That's a separate exercise where we look at the disaggregation of the county council's budget. We add to that the budgets held by the sovereign authorities, and that gives us a broad idea of what we think the cost of services will be going forward. We add into that budget for all the pressures that we're aware of and all the areas where we think we can reduce the budget, and that gives us a starting position for the budget. But the two there is a link between them, but it doesn't mean that one can't go ahead without the other. The main bit that will be outstanding will be the level of reserves and balances that actually go into the new authority, because we simply won't have technically closed the accounts by that point in time.
Yeah, but you can work on sensible estimates and then make any relatively minor adjustments, because we'll be within, we should be within a few single-digit millions of these numbers, shouldn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, right. So let's crack on then with the finance update from Audra. Sorry, Audra, where are you? Sorry, it's my screen. I was just looking for you. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, evening members. The report in front of you shows a slightly improved position overall of approximately £58,000 compared to the last time we reported the outturn. And really that's made up of two areas. You'll notice some new faces as we go along, and all of the appointments now to the statutory positions, some of the senior positions have been made that were previously budgeted for. And due to the various start dates of those people, we have a favourable variance on that budget of around £190,000. So it's favourable at the moment, and it's good to know that if we need to top up contingency at all as we go through, and you'll hear comments from the other areas, questions raised about capacity and things like that. So that's what we have the contingency there for. And you'll see a thread through all of these things, hopefully, for what's reported to you. On the benefits realisation, with this finance report, it's only ever a snapshot in time because we are in a dynamic environment, and we've seen a change in a declining position on the home to school transport income, which is directly related to COVID-19. As was promised last time at the committee, we have also included in this report the outturn position of all of the 8 sovereign authorities. And that also shows an improvement compared to last time, where it was looking at the time that there was a 1.4 million budget deficit overall that didn't have any mitigations to offset it. I'm pleased to say now that you can see in the table that all of the overspends for all of the various reasons, and there are common themes throughout, are being mitigated. That said, obviously the mitigations do include drawdown from reserves, and whilst that's what they're there for, it obviously means that going forward into the 2 new unitaries, any use of reserves now means that there's less later on for us to call on. So we continue to lobby government in terms of the additional costs from COVID. And as I said earlier, this really is a snapshot in time. And these figures are moving constantly. But to give you assurance in terms of the monitoring and the robustness that's challenged on these going forward, we're in a good position. On that note, Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions? I see you got one from Danielle. Danielle?
Lovely, thank you very much. I really appreciate the pressure being put on government to bring the money in, and it seems to be working. So maybe a bit more pressure and we'll get the whole lot that we need back in, because I am worried about the use of reserves. And the reason I'm worried about them, obviously reserves can be used for contingencies, I understand that, but the reason why I'm particularly bothered about it is because we're dealing with a lot of unknowns at the minute. So the reduced level of income from council tax, from business rates, from rents and from services, we don't know those figures yet, and they're going to have a huge impact. But on top of that, we're told there is a recession coming, and I think we're beginning to see it because jobs are going. People are finding are struggling to maintain roofs over their heads. Evictions are going up. So poverty is increasing, and we can see that with the huge, enormous use of food banks. There's going to be less money in the system. So there's going to be less money coming in. People are going to have less money in their pockets. And all of that is going to cause a depression of some sort or another, how severe. You'll know better than I do. But I'm just worried, you know, that we won't have enough reserves or enough contingencies to help meet that kind of pending situation, let alone having the resources to help ameliorate the impact of all of that on our residents. So I am really, really worried about that. And then this is a bit of a side thing.
Yeah, can we stick to the programme budget here?
Okay, okay. I'll leave it there.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, just a comment. Obviously, we want to try and limit the amount of reserves used because we need to use them as we move forward. But also, just to highlight, it's got NCC's surplus, predicted surplus down there, which should hopefully increase as we move through the year. And I just wanted to make the point that when I first got round the table with colleagues on this call and with colleagues in the north, that I made the commitment that at NCC we'll do our very best to put the services and the finances right, because we were in quite a dark place back in 2 or 3 years ago. And as Audra's report says there, we're looking to deliver a surplus this year, which should have a net benefit to both the north and the west unitary as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think on the wider piece on money in general and finances in particular, maybe tomorrow afternoon we might get a glimmer of light in terms of overall government spending, and then eventually that will come down to a settlement for local government. Anything else then on that part? Is that us done with the programme update? So we move on to the programme change requests. Who's taking this?
I am, Chair, Anna.
Anna?
So, Chair, can we just ask if Cabinet are content to note the previous?
Oh, apologies. Thanks, Paul. Cabinet, are you content to note the Programme Director's updates? Agreed? Thank you.
Agreed.
So, Anna E.
Thank you, Chair. So just bringing this report to members, which would just like to make sure that members note that we've now put in place a proper change request process in relation to the blueprint. If you recall, we previously presented to members an overall blueprint that was signed off back in May and then was then shared with the executive. And then that was followed by a detailed blueprint, which then broke down even more detail. We were aware that there were some anomalies between the two and recognised that we needed to move to a more formal documentation and probably away from the presentations and all the colour coding, which could be complex for people to understand and also quite difficult for staff to search if they wanted to know what was happening to functions and services. So we've now produced a table to that effect with a very, very clear view about what happens to each service line and where it goes, whether it's disaggregated, hosted or externally provided, so that it's very clear to everybody the baseline that we're starting with and that's been signed off by members. We've also then produced a change control log where if we formally agree any change to what's happened in the blueprint, then that goes through due process and there's a very, very clear audit trail of decisions made. So this is in part correcting those with the appendices A, B and C that you can see that sets out that kind of more formal documentation, and we will now be using that as the master document. To that end as well, then we have brought forward to the exec the first of the formal changes that we wanted to make to the previously signed off blueprint, which are attached in the first appendix to this. And those changes are public health and emergency planning, which we've previously talked about. And we have suggested, and members at JIE agreed, that now is not the time in the middle of the COVID pandemic and crisis to split the public health and emergency planning teams, and therefore suggested and agreed that we should keep that as a single service hosted for a year and then look to redesign it and then distribute it and disaggregate it later in 2021 once we're through, hopefully, this pandemic and its effects. The The other main changes are 3 areas of adults. As you know, previously we reported that we hope to disaggregate most of adults. We had a couple of areas where we didn't think we could do that, but we're now pleased to say that we can confirm we would also like to disaggregate brokerage, which does placements, our commissioning and contracts team, and also our safeguarding team. And just with a mind to what the query that Councillor Stone raised before, the reason for that is we will still have a central assurance role to check that everything is done in a timely way in safeguarding, but this will make sure that the teams are then aligned to areas and they will know their patches and their homes and particular groups and services and providers that operate in them, so much closer to the teams, which we think is far more effective. If members agree that that's something we should progress with, as we hope, that would mean that only 50 of the 1,600 adult staff were then not disaggregated going forward, which I think is a good result. The final request for a change was in terms of the children's ICF, Intelligent Client Function, which is the monitoring function that sits over the Children's Trust in terms of ensuring they comply with the contract and produce performance data and information about finances that's so important to the 2 new councils. Having talked to the leaders, we had originally thought it should be a disaggregated function, but inevitably that would mean half roles because there wasn't a full-time role for the North and the West in some of the roles, for example, some of the financial accounting roles and things like that. And so there was a sensible conversation about actually should we employ a full-time team that does things for both councils and very clearly produces data and information for both councils to be satisfied and ensure that both of them get the relevant monitoring, but works together as one team, and that would save duplication of effort and the risk that people actually didn't have it as their main job and shared it with other tasks that they did. So we thought it was a sensible suggestion to have one shared client function unit reporting to both, and then the adults ones and public health. So if members are happy with that, happy to take any questions, but hopefully more a question of setting out the formal process so that everybody is clear going forward. Thank you, Chair.
I don't see any blue hands going up. So without that, then I will move. So the recommendation is to approve the change request process as outlined. So are we agreed on the process? Agreed? Agreed, thank you. And then the second part then, that having agreed the process, we've got 3 worked through examples. That's very diligent, Anna. So are we agreed then to approve the changes as requested to the blueprint as set out? Agreed? So that's also agreed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8 then, future Northants governance, page 43 of the pack. Jane? According to my notes, you're doing this one.
I'm happy to walk through it if you want me to. No. Could I have it on the screen? Just waiting for that to come up. Is it coming?
Might have to crack on without it, Jane.
Yeah, okay. I'll just let me go to it on the other.
Just bear with me. I'll bring it up, but carry on.
Okay, so just to preempt this, when the slides come up, I'll walk you through it. But in order to take the programme forward, obviously, we now needed to move much more into the west and north elements of the programme. Thanks, Paul, he's getting there. So we had to relook at the governance to ensure that the West specific items were picked up as well as the North specific deliverables were picked up. So the first slide you can see is revised governance programme. So as you can see that on the West side, there's West specific deliverables, North specific deliverables, and there's common deliverables because there's a number of programmes that still are centrally focused, such as corporate, ICT, and all of those things that are really jointly entwined at this point in time. The scope of the activity within those, as you can see, is the blueprint implementation. So making sure we deliver all the things that you've agreed in the blueprint. Day one readiness. So the program that George Candler is overseeing as the SRO, to ensure that we have everything we need to be ready for day one to go live and operate. And the post go live planning. So there is elements of the program that will run over, and there are also things that we will be doing beyond day one, obviously, that will feed into this. So those will be in that part. Next slide, please. Okay. So the scope of the activity under the governance, you've got the implementation tasks for go live. So those are tasks and deliverables that end on the 31st of March. So anything that is up to the date of vesting. You've then got the implementation of day one. So most of this will be finished by day one, but there will be a period of time, which we've always known about, where there are some elements that we can't get done for day one, or some issues that may arise that we may need to do a bit of further work on past day one. So one of the jobs that I've got to do, and I'm starting on, is that stabilisation piece that puts us in that area and helps us to understand the things that are within that part of the program beyond day one. And then the post day one delivery and transformation plans. So as we know, there is a lot of work that needs to be done from day two onwards around transforming services, the aggregation of services, those services that are hosted, and a whole number of other things that need doing, which I'm currently going to be working with the Task and Finish Group, the Transformation Task and Finish Group, and Councillor Golby is the chair of that, to look at how do we prioritise those transformation tasks for the first few years. Okay, can go on to the next one. So this is the revised programme governance. You'll recognise some of this anyway, because the West Shadow Executive and the North Shadow Executive are already in existence, as is the West Overview and Scrutiny, North Overview and Scrutiny, and the West Shadow Authority. So those three are already in existence. The difference is at the bottom element. Before, we had something that was the joint, just the JIE, so the Joint Implementation Executive. Now what we've got as well is a West Implementation Executive and a North one, to ensure that any West only issues or decisions are brought through the right pathway. So as we move towards day one, there should be more coming through West and North and less going to the joint, but the joint is there to pick up any decisions really that are, it's imperative that we make them together as the North and West. Okay, so, but that will reduce time and scope. If you go down to the next one. So this is the bit that sits underneath it. Underneath that is the officer boards, which is the West Implementation Board and the North Implementation Board. So everything that's coming through into, before it gets to members, it will be seen through these boards. And you can see the West ELT and the North CLT there. So those are the management team meetings, the leadership team meetings, where many of the decisions for the forward part that are delegated to the West will take place, and then they'll come through, any reports will come through the boards and up into the members' governance. And as you can see, myself on the West sit over and overseeing that and make sure that all the information is coming through to you that needs to come through, in consultation with our monitoring officers to ensure we're doing it the right way, and the same in the North there. And underneath that, you can also see all of the rest of the programme team that also sits under that. Okay, so I think that's the last. Is there another slide underneath that? Yep, sorry, beg your pardon. So this is the programme board structure. So slight changes to these in terms of chairing. The West Place Board, Ian Vincent has done a sterling job as a Chief Executive of Daventry in taking that forward as it was joint. Because it's now progressed into West and North, Martin Hammond has agreed to chair the North version of the Place Board, and I'm currently chairing the West version of the Place Board until we get those directors of place recruited, and then they will take over that. As you can see in the centre, there's still many joint boards there. Children's Services chair is now Kathy Hadley as the DCS. You've got the corporate board, which is currently Martin Cox, but when you get a director of corporate for the West recruited, they'll step into that, and the North will be advised who they want to do that at that point. ICT and governance will stay as Richard Ellis for the moment. And then you've got the finance, which is Barry, but there is also deputy chairs in the two Section 151s for North and West to ensure the governance is right. And the Programme Board, Adult Services, the chair remains as Anna because she's got the overarching responsibility. But deputy chairs are the two new DASs for North and West. I think that's the last slide. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Jane? You're getting away free, Jane. Okay, well, thank you for that. I think that structure is self-explanatory, and it certainly feels now is the time to go, you know, to go our own ways up to a point, but there'll always be a need to be working the number of things, children's and other things going forward together. What do we need to do in this one? We're noting it, Paul. Yeah, so we need to agree the recommendation. So are we recommend that we note the contents of the report and the appendix and endorse the approach being taken? So are we agreed on that? I think we're agreed. Thank you. So we move to item 9, tier 1 to 3 structure. This is management tiers, not to be confused with other tiers 1 to 3 that are more topical at the moment. Anna, what tier are we going to come in at?
Oh, I couldn't possibly commit at this point. Thank you, Chair. So members will have the paper in front of you relating to the tier 1 to 3, in effect, senior structures for West Northamptonshire Council. Obviously, this is a very key step that we need to take, and really critically important in terms of delivering safe and legal services on the 21st of April, and making sure that we have really, really clear accountability in place with senior roles and senior owners, not just for members, but also for staff to get decisions and to make sure that we can function and deliver our statutory duties. It's also important because we need the earliest appointment of people who can then lead all of these services through the aggregation and transformation process, working with Jane to make sure that we can realise our ambitions and our priorities. So the report sets out in Appendix 1 the proposed structure that we've put in place, and note really that the structure is for those top tier 1 to 3 roles. Below that, what you see is potential functions that will sit under each part of that structure. We obviously in the process, so we put this together following feedback, both from the appointments panel of members, but also with consultation with all the CEOs across all of the 8 councils to make sure that they also had a chance to input and make sure that we hadn't missed anything. All the staff affected by the new structure have been communicated with, and we've now started a formal consultation process with staff and with unions over a 30-day period. And now we're actively working with them in terms of undertaking one-to-ones with affected staff, meeting with the unions. We're doing group sessions of Q&As, obviously member sessions have been done too, and also union sessions to get feedback and consult obviously on changes and queries and issues that they've got. We're in the process at the moment of sharing the process and priorities of the recruitment process, and obviously we're collating feedback from all stakeholders as part of that consultation, which we'll reflect on at the end of that process. Note that there are 2 tier 2 roles still to recruit to, Director of Corporate Services and Director of Place, Economy and Environment in the West. These roles are subject to member appointment as set out in Appendix 2 and in line with the regulations, the staffing regulations. And Appendix 3 sets out the proposed panel of members who will be responsible for the selection process and recruitment process to those roles. For tier 3, we're proposing that it's managed through internal organisation and restructure processes led by myself, but obviously in terms of an internal selection process then across the directors and the senior management team sitting on the panels. We do recognise obviously this is a period of great uncertainty for the senior staff involved across the councils, and we are offering a range of support to affected staff, both in terms of CV writing, preparing for interviews, all of those things, and obviously one-to-ones are key as part of that process too. We're also, as I said, working through group and individual feedback at the moment, and collecting that. And as the paper says, we will be coming back to members with the outcomes of those and the consultation and any sort of changes that we then make on the back of the feedback that we've had. But hopefully the report itself is self-explanatory in terms of the process, and I'll happily take any questions from members that they may have about it. Thank you.
Any questions? Don't see any. Sorry, Danielle wants to come in.
Yeah, thank you. Now that we've got a more detailed understanding of what the staffing requirements are at all those tiers, are we able to judge then the prediction that this is going to be coming in at a great savings compared to the staffing liabilities of all the districts and boroughs in the county?
It was in the report, wasn't it? 1.8 million.
That's right, correct. Yes,
Martin?
Chair.
Yeah. Does that mean our council tax is going to go down?
I think it will in the borough. Richard?
It's just an observation, really. I'm grateful for officers, we debated long and hard about raising the status of the environment so the public could see quite clearly that we had a senior leader responsible for that, as somebody who will be, I know we all are, but someone specifically. So I just wanted to share my appreciation to the team for allowing that, because I think that will be important as we move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Richard. Anybody else? So I'll move to the recommendations then. So recommended that the Shadow Executive note and ratifies the work undertaken to develop the proposed structure and the subsequent consultation process as specified in section 4. Agrees the proposed leadership structure as per Appendix 1, noting that it's subject to consultation with our recognised trade unions and impacted employees, and may result in minor revisions being made, and minor changes will be delegated to the head of PED service, and any significant changes that are to be made part of a formal consultation being shared with the Shadow Executive at a future meeting. And C, notes and ratifies the selection and recruitment principles as specified in sections 5 and 6, subject to the outcomes of the consultation. Are we all agreed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
External audit appointment arrangements. Martin. Auditors are people that can't cope with the excitement of accountancy. Discuss.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a requirement to appoint external auditors by the end of December, and the paper sets out the 3 options that there are. The first one is to make a standalone appointment, which essentially we don't have time to do. The second one is to set up a joint auditor panel and to go through a procurement arrangement once we've got a joint auditor panel in place, which again we don't have time to do. And the third option is to opt into PSAA, which was the body set up by the LGA to appoint auditors. So the recommendation in the report is to actually opt into PSAA. They won't appoint auditors at this stage. What they will do is they will need to opt in first of all. They will then consult on their proposed auditor choice and seek views from us on that appointment. So we don't need to give a view at this point in terms of who we think the auditors should or shouldn't be. That will come as part of the process if we opt into PSAA. They'll consult on that. We can give our views at that point. But the important point is that we do need to have auditors appointed by the end of December 2020, which is the reason why it comes before you this evening.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure who was for Adam.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's Hobson's choice to a degree here, isn't it? The recommendation is absolutely spot on. And actually, my question was going to be one that Martin's already answered as to whether we can influence at any stage the choice of auditor, because our experience of auditors in Northamptonshire has been diverse, shall we say, and it's important that we have some influence over the process. So I'm very glad to hear Martin's comments on that front.
Yeah, and I'm through you, Chair. You know, we do have that opportunity to influence. So they will give a view in terms of who they think the auditors will be, and then we have an opportunity to respond to that. And the report sets out actually the grounds on which, under paragraph 4.7, the grounds on which we can give them feedback in relation to their proposal. So it does give that opportunity to influence the appointment of those auditors.
Okay, Richard. Sorry, I'll take it out when you're finished. Okay, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's on the same lines as Adam, really. I think weren't the PSAA responsible for the selection of the last auditors that couldn't or have had difficulty fulfilling the contract? Is that correct, Mike?
It's fair to say that all of the sovereign authorities across Northamptonshire have opted into PSAA, who have then appointed the auditors that are currently in place.
And that was my point, is that wasn't a particularly successful one, and I'm pleased that you've answered the question, Adam, that we will be able to influence the same way and not have fait accompli, and but hopefully next time we'll have an auditor that actually can fulfill the contract that they were offered in the first place.
Lizzie?
Yeah, Martin, am I right in thinking that the choice that they use is actually very limited to probably the top 4 auditors in the country at the moment, because that's the framework? And like Adam and Richard, you know, the current audit situation needs a lot to be desired, and not only from the struggles we've had, but also what we're paying. So I would ask that the contract that we go into can be as much as we've tried to be as watertight as possible, so that we don't actually triple, quadruple, even more the fees that we seem to be having at the moment.
The report did mention that we were unlikely to get, was it scale rates? Was that the term that was being used? But is there an opportunity then, if we can't get, shall we say, standard rates, because there'll be people saying, well, but there's complex issues there, that we can negotiate a fixed rate, bearing in mind they should then know what these complex issues are?
There's always a get out, so you can seek to negotiate what the scale fee will be, but if the auditor then comes in and has to do additional work, they will charge you for that. They need to go back through PSAA, and PSA need to say, yes, we are happy you've taken on this additional work, and we are happy that you are charging that additional charge. So there is a safeguard in that respect, but if they do additional work, they will charge additional fees for that.
I mean, I would really like to, sorry, who's that? I'd really like to see us not using the top 4 auditors. I'd like to see more of a localised approach, but I don't see, if we use this framework, that we can do that. But I don't think we have any alternative, given that we have to sort this out by the end of December. But I think using those top 4, we are going to be, they're going to have us over a barrel, whatever, is my opinion.
I think you'll have an issue with getting people who would be competent in terms of the complexities of local government generally. So, you know, if you use Bluggs and Co from down the road, they may not then be competent enough to know the complexity of local government. So I think, again, had you lose, you know, as you say, you're over a barrel no matter which way you turn. Richard?
Yeah, I think it's a sound option. I'm wondering about whether we can influence the agreement in which we sign up to ensure that if there is any on the auditor side failing to achieve what they promised to achieve, is there any compensation or anything that we can do in consequence to that? Because it just seems to be a lot of frustration and people getting away with not fulfilling promises and contracts that they've made. So I'm just saying, on our side, is there anything we can put in there to ensure that there is some sort of penalty clause on whether that's the right word, to ensure that the person fulfills what they say they would do?
Yeah, I think we're all of a similar opinion. You know, I think it's a handy it's a handy job to be in, where you can actually find the work, decide it has to be done, and then bill you for it, and you've no real chance of doing it. So let's wait. If we're going to make this step, when they come up with a proposed name, then we can probably have a no hold barred discussion around who it is.
I was just saying,
say if they give us a 2-letter response, we might give them a 2-letter response and reply.
Yeah, Chair. I think the is from Martin. Is there a way that we can put in there some sort of something that protects us to ensure we get what we
through you, Chair, just through negotiations and discussion with PSAA. So we can't absolutely build safeguards in which limits the amount of cost we'll receive, but we can make our views known to PSAA when they tell us what who the auditor proposed is, who the proposed auditor is, and also in relation to the charging mechanisms for that. If the auditors aren't delivering to what they're required to do, so towards the overall spec, then yes, we'd have some comeback on that. But if they have to do additional work in terms of closing the accounts or anything else, they will be seeking additional fees from us. And regardless of the auditor, whoever that auditor is, they would take the same approach.
No. I think I'm more the former. Just that if we make an agreement that they deliver what we've agreed to, if there are additional costs, some sort of complexity, I can understand that. What I get wound up about is when they don't even deliver what they promised to deliver, but for a set fee. It's having protection for public money at that stage that I would have. If we could do that, that would be right for our organisation, I feel.
Yeah. Rebecca?
Chair.
Sorry. Can you just bring Rebecca in and then Teresa? Rebecca?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering what the history or the reputation is of the PSAA in considering the client's wishes in terms of appointment of auditor, and also in terms of defending their interests over that of the auditor should negotiations be required.
I'm sure Martin might be able to answer some of that, but they're a relatively new organisation, so it's only a couple of years old. I'm not sure how well tested it is in terms of challenge back, but Martin might have more information on that. There has been a recent, just for all of your information, there has been a recent review of audit, the Redmond review, and I have to admit it was a bit disappointing in that it didn't really go very far in terms of some of the challenges certainly that we have, and we did feed into that. And the fact that we're on live, I wouldn't really want to say some of the things I'd like to say, or I'll probably be sued. So I don't think I should, but all I can say is it's a nice job to have where you can decide the fees, decide your work, and then increase the fees by 500% and still expect to get paid. So I don't think I should say any more than that, or I definitely will end up in trouble.
Okay, well, I think we all know what we're all saying, albeit being as diplomatic as we can. So the recommendation then is, just let me find it, that we agree to opt into the public sector audit appointment PSAA process, because we don't really have any other choice. But are we agreed on that? Agreed. Thank you. Item 11. Health and safety and well-being policy. Martin Cox.
Hi, Chair. Evening, members. Just wanted to say a few words to introduce this. This is a really critical policy for our employees, and we thought it appropriate to bring that to the executive for consideration and hopefully support and endorsement. It is the key policy how we set up our new council and all the health, safety and well-being policies and work that flows underneath that. So what you've got today is really, for our employees, the safe bit of Safe and Legal Plus. It's been developed by all our colleagues in the health and safety network across all our existing councils. It's been done in consultation with our trade union colleagues. So what you have in front of you today is a suggested framework that meets our legal responsibilities, that outlines how we will work with trade unions and employees to ensure their health, safety and well-being, how we will deal with issues, how we will correspond, what the level of lists, the level of risks, and also that so given an idea of the policies that are already in development to support this. But this is a recommended framework which we hope will assure you that our professional colleagues and trade unions have developed that in respect of employees, and if agreed and implemented in the new year, will ensure there is a safe environment to work. Especially important in these times where with COVID and the plethora of risk assessments and the heightened issues around working from home and work. So, Chair, I'd suggest in the recommendation that this is a policy to be approved for West Northamptonshire.
I see Danielle wants to come in before I bring Cabinet colleagues in. Danielle.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. I had some lovely feedback on the process you've embarked on to get to this stage from trade union colleagues. So I'd like to thank you very much for that. I think that's really important to get that kind of engagement, and people need to see their own ideas reflected in our policies. I feel very strongly about that. I just wanted to ask you about, at the borough, for example, and at the county, we've taken time over many years to bring in different kinds of policies. And some of them are rather good, I feel. So if I give you an example, at the borough, we've got dying to work as a policy. We've got family-friendly policies as part of our work. We've got a lone working policy, and we obviously do need a home working policy. How is all of that going to be dealt with? Because I'm sure all the districts and boroughs in the county have all got policies, some of which I'm sure can be chucked out the window because they're old. But you know, most of us have worked really hard to make sure that our policies are up to date, and we feel quite important. So how is that going to happen?
Well, we have a lot of our existing colleagues in health and safety and HR that are, well, probably not as we speak, but during the working week is developing those policies. And the principles we set with them through the corporate programme was, we want something that fits our new organisation, so is developed for an organisation of size, but actually we want best practice. And if best practice is the policies we've already got, then we use them effectively. So we will not, we won't start from we haven't started from a blank piece of paper, and we won't. We will use the good stuff we've already got and adopt that for the West. So I've got a long list of health and safety policies that colleagues are working on. I've got a long list of HR ones. To answer specifically, dying to work, quite a few of our councils across the West and North have already adopted that. So that will be one that is on our list to develop that for the West. So when the detail comes, will be more about the list of policies we've got, because I don't think you'll ever have enough time to go through them all. You will see all the ones you've mentioned. We are using what already works, and we're making it hopefully best practice where it's not.
Okay, thank you. So Rebecca, and then Phil, and then Richard. Rebecca.
Sorry, that's a lazy hand that hasn't come down.
Okay, Phil.
Sorry, unmute myself. Thank you, Chair. Just to say that some of those policies that Danielle were referring to, such as dying to work, these are also being considered by the Equalities Group, and I think we'll be coming back with recommendations about signing up to them and considering them going forward. So these are issues that the working group is looking at and is taking into account. Can I just say, as somebody who used to work in health and safety, I think this is a good document. But I do have the feeling, and this is not derogatory to anybody who's been involved in any way, shape, or form. Some policies do tend to go way beyond what is legally required. And we have had in the borough a couple of silly things that have arisen that have perhaps embarrassed the authority slightly, in that, you know, the mayor wanted a flag on the front of his car, but it was told he couldn't because it's a health and safety issue. You know, that now appears on the Health and Safety Executives Myths website, you know, as something that's silly. So I hope that this policy is realistic. It doesn't stop things like mayors having flags on their cars. It doesn't stop kids playing conkers. All these silly things that health and safety has a bad reputation for aren't going to come out from this policy. I don't think it will. I think, as I say, it's a good policy, but let's not have those silly things coming up that I think reflect badly on any authority if they do. Thank you, Chair.
Just to answer that, Councillor Lara. Thank you. I would just say that there would be nothing in here that I think would replicate those examples. The beauty of having different representatives from our sovereign councils means there is debate and discussion, and I don't think it'll ever get to us in the corporate board if it was something what you might call or consider daft. No, these are practical things to keep our employees and members safe when they're engaging with work, be it in the workplace or at home.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would agree with Phil with regard to sometimes we go over the top with health and safety. I remember when we reviewed our health and safety procedures when I was head of firearms training, we had a massive Bible, and we got somebody in that basically threw half of it out because it was just so over the top. So it needs to be operational, practical, logical. It needs to be understood by the people we work with. So I would certainly support Phil's view on that. My one was more about the learning from COVID-19. You know, I personally felt that from what I observed when the outbreak first came, that I didn't really feel it was taken that seriously, and that may well be a misconception. I'm just wondering, will we be reviewing how we as an authority responded to that, and making sure that any lessons learned about how we, if we ever come across this again, how we should conduct ourselves as leaders, as an organisation, with regard to safe working environments, safe working practices, to ensure that we get it right first time. I'm really glad that we never had an outbreak as a result of coming from the NCC or from any of our meetings. But sometimes I feel that may be a little bit of more luck than judgment on occasions. And really, do you have an intention to review what we can learn and make better next time round if we ever have to face this sort of thing again? Martin?
Yes, Councillor Olga. Yes, we. I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, what we've done since March has been completely unprecedented in our lifetime. So you're right. I think as we went through, everyone in this country and the world was learning as it was happening, and you know there was an awful lot of learning and changes. I would say from after the first couple of months, certainly in the health, safety, and well-being, I think we were getting it a lot more right than it wasn't right. And I think now we are probably over and above the top of the game in terms of how we manage risks in the workplace and how we support employees that were asking to work from home all the time. And absolutely, yes. I mean, when, and hopefully soon, we get to the end of this, I think that will dramatically need a review to say, what have we learned? Where are we? And make sure that our emergency planning in the future reflects the learning. But, you know, as of today, if we were asking around the 20th of March, I would say we were learning as it was happening in the health and safety community. Today, I think there's a lot more reassurance that learning has been made and we're much safer when we engage with work.
I certainly would agree that I think we've really come a long way from the first few months of the outbreak. It's really pleasing to see. It's just making sure that we haven't got to go through any pain or anguish next time and get it as right as quickly as possible. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. There are some policies that we have to review, bring to council on an annual basis. For instance, the food inspection regime that it certainly comes to Northamptonshire every year annually, and it gives you the opportunity to check it, review it, tweak it, and keep it up to date. Would this one be a great, even if it wasn't necessarily legally required, would be a good practice thing that we bring the health and safety report to the executive or council at least annually, so it gives people the opportunity to check it, that it doesn't just sit as a document that gathers dust and doesn't get reviewed. So we can always be on top of best practice and on top of making sure that, you know, if there's any over strict interpretations, they too can be ironed out, but also if we see lax interpretations, they can be tightened up. Would that be something that we should maybe consider?
Well, from a professional point of view, Chair, I think that's a great idea. Sometimes our health and safety professionals don't feel they get the airtime and the ability to talk to senior leaders, and I think they would welcome the opportunity of reviewing it, explaining what has been learned and changed, and also sharing where they're getting things right. So I know we don't have to, but I would totally support a suggestion like that, just to make sure that we're really clear to our employees and our members that we operate a policy that works.
Okay, so if I move to the recommendations, then the recommendation that we approve the health and safety and wellbeing policy. Are we agreed on that? And then are we happy to move that we have a second recommendation that we, you know, in approximately 12 months time, we give this an annual update at the executive or council, wherever is the most appropriate, in a year's time? Are we agreed on that? Okay, so if that were confidence in our health and safety staff, then Martin, please do tell them that, you know, that we wish to, you know, carry on as we want to get it right from the start.
Thank you. I will do. Thank you.
Comms and engagement, logo, visual identity approval. Jonathan, we have a logo.
Indeed we do. Indeed we do. Stand by for the drama. I don't know, Paul, are you going to put the slides up from about 99 so we can do a grand reveal thing?
I certainly will.
Be splendid. It's yeah, do you know, I think we've really got somewhere with this. I tell you what, the fantastic consultation, public survey that was done on it, huge number of responses, incredibly constructive, and you'll see as we go through this how we've really built on those. Just a quick reminder, next page please, Paul. Some of our basic principles: we wanted something to display the name of the council clearly, simple, clean, modern design, make it accessible, that is to say, you know, easily recognizable. Bear in mind that this may be on ID badges that are flashed at people and so on, so it needs to be recognizable quite quickly, and it needs to represent, if you like, a 21st century organization that has got, you know, a proud history for the area. So a reminder, next page, Paul, thank you. A reminder of our top three. These were the three that went out to the public survey, and as you can see, the top one got the strongest number of positive votes. So really grateful to everybody that completed the survey. They didn't have the chance to identify who they were. We were looking for public comments. We particularly nudged, if you like, stakeholders and so on. What was interesting is a significant number of people where they had the chance to identify their relationship perhaps with the council, significant number of staff. And some of the really great comments came from staff. So next page, please, Paul. Probably two main themes that came out, suggested amendments following the survey. Some people said, shouldn't it be 3 rings? Well, of course, if these rings are symbolic of councils coming together, then of course there should be 4. But nevertheless, I understand what people are saying. There were 3 geographies of Northampton, Daventry and South Northampton, and that point was made quite strongly. So we reflected on that and felt that perhaps we could go for 3, but actually what it highlighted is that there may have been something lacking, which is the proud history of the county. And indeed, we were surprised how very many people felt that the sort of interlocking rings reflected a sort of a rose design. So we've built on that and pulled all those comments together. Drum roll, please, and next page, Paul. Which has come out with this. Now, I think it looks really good. I think from the point of view of recognition by the public and people becoming familiar with the identity, for a logo to represent inward investment and so on, I just think it's modern and it's clean. What I think is particularly good is when you see it in sort of in situ images, which Paul, please, is the next page. I just think that really looks good if you see it in those different scenarios. Our next agenda item will talk about when and how we'll be rebranding these various different things. But I think in whatever circumstance, you've got something new, something modern, a tip back to our history, but something that's proud for the future. Colours represent, of course, the main colours in the existing 3 district councils. We've been very careful on that and tracked down those precise colours, but also has been a full accessibility test that checks whether visual impairment would still make this identifiable and so on. We have also created a sort of an ink light version, which might be if you're mass producing papers, it just shows the outline in fine without the colour of the rings and without the detail of the rings. So I think a great success. Just like to particularly pay thanks then to the in-house designer. We weren't particularly tough. If we had to go outside to some of the great expertise that exists in West Northampton in design and so on, we would have done, and we would have paid for that. As it happens, we were very lucky to use an in-house designer already working for one of our councils, and that's Matt Kantowski. I'd like to thank him a great deal for the type of work and his patience in running somewhere in the region about 150 versions, probably not quite that many, but quite a lot. But also to the Task and Finish group, worked very hard, and we've got a great team of supporting officers. So to them, we're extremely grateful. I don't think the next page tells you much, but if we skip to the one beyond that, Paul, really what that just shows, that's it, not to worry. Okay, well that's actually as a separate appendix, I think, on your paperwork. It's just to say that we did do quite a careful, diligent search in the form of a logo similarities check. This just checks similarity with others and ensures that we're safe, and indeed that's proved to be positive. So all in all, I think we've got a conclusion there. Obviously, these papers were published for this meeting a week or so ago, so we popped a press release out just to make people aware. And generally, we've seen good reaction and acceptance. So I think that's pretty good. We do know that everybody has a different opinion on these things. On balance, I think we've managed, with the help of the design and the Task and Finish group, to get this about right, I hope. So just to highlight the recommendations, we're asking executive please just to approve this final design. Please to note that it was very much shaped around the opinion survey, which went out to staff, trade unions, councillors, partners and so on, and that it was created by an in-house designer. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take questions.
Richard?
I was just thinking, advising everyone to put on your tin hat and your flak jacket, because there's nothing that generates a good debate like a logo, does it? But in all seriousness, I absolutely love it, Jonathan. I think you and your team and have done a fantastic job. And I actually I saw it a couple of times recently and thought I'd be really proud to have that on, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected and to serve in the new administration, I would love to have a calling card with that logo on it. I think it's really sharp and smart. I think what's ever really clever is you did it in-house. You could have paid a lot of money to get this sorted out, and that's another good bonus. So congratulations to you all. I'm going to withdraw from the battlefield now because I'm not happy with what you've done, and I hope my colleagues are too. Thank you.
Extremely grateful for your comments.
So, Chairman, did you call my name?
Yeah, sorry, I was at a legacy hand.
Jonathan was being very polite and thanking Councillor August. I wasn't too sure. Jonathan knows very well that I wasn't bowled over by the initial proposals, some of the designs, but I think the final product is absolutely fantastic, and we should be very proud about the way that we've come to this conclusion, especially, as Richard says, the fact that it was designed in-house to provide best value for our taxpayers. And I particularly like the fact that whilst it pays due tribute to the past, the colours of the existing sovereign councils, I think it also displays a strong message of unity and the coming together of those three areas, which is important for the future of everyone in West Northamptonshire. So thank you and well done, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca.
Yes, everything I had said has been said by the previous two speakers. However, I think actually we, as a committee, want to send our thanks to Mr. Katalski, who I think is from Kettering. Because I think we should record it, because actually he has done a fine job and saved us several, probably tens of thousands of pounds. And I think that it really is a strong identity for our new West Unitary.
Yeah, I would certainly endorse that. Sorry, Lizzie?
Yeah, which office is Mr. Katalski residing in at the moment?
He is actually, as just been said, he's a Kettering employee.
Kettering, okay.
He's in the family, as it were. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now we've managed to get there, and you could arguably say as well about disentangling the fourth ring from the county, but actually putting it almost around the edge. It was always the wrapper that held everything, so that encompassed everything. So you haven't actually thrown it away if anybody was to try to think like that. So we have a logo. Colleagues, are we happy with that?
Yeah, can I just come in? Is it possible that we could send a note of thanks to the team from you?
Absolutely.
Because I think this is going to be something that's going to go for generations, and it's quite significant. So I think some feedback to our officers, less about yourself, and from all of us, thanking them for their work. If we agree,
Thank you. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
So, Rebecca, do you want to come back in, or are you just not taking your hand down? Rebecca?
No, I'm just trying to lower my hand, but it's not working.
Oh, okay.
It's stubbornly.
It's gone now. There you go. So, part two of this then is the rebranding strategy. Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Just to check, there's separate recommendations. I think can we formally confirm we've agreed with recommendations on the adoption of the logo?
Yeah, so we'll do that again then, just for clarity. So are we agreed on the adoption of the logo? Any against? Because if you are, you have to draw your own that's better. So right, Jonathan, we have one now. So how are you going to use it?
Right, let's talk about how we use it. Yeah, absolutely. Now, clearly, there are some high priorities here for ID badges, perhaps a sign outside of head office building or whatever. These need to be changed urgently. Others are of less priority. So, for example, if we see a waste bin in a park, we may decide that actually we wait till that reaches the end of its natural life before we bother replacing it with one that's appropriately branded. What this report does, it doesn't give you a full chapter and verse, it just talks about what the priority is for how we go about this process. It's also saying that for those things that need to be changed initially or in the early stages, then that'll be part of the sort of future Northants unitary budget. Thereafter, the replacement of such things becomes a BAU at 3.6 means business as usual. In other words, it's part of everyday life. So in 5 years' time, when a bin is replaced, it will naturally be replaced with the appropriate logo showing on it. The driver of 5.2 on the report there is customer need. Is it important where it's important to clearly identify a member of staff, for example, to to a member of the public, then that's important. There is some element of cultural change. So outside an office, for example, we need that sense of identity straight away, and for people who are looking for a building or whatever. We put in the report a couple of indications of the various different categories. Category 1 being safe and legal on day one. These are items which have official, statutory or legal status. So if you get, when you fill in a planning application form or complaints response around elections, car parking tickets, penalty notices and so on, these are clearly extremely important. Category 2 is a bit more proactive, day 2 onwards, other forms of signage, vehicles and so on. And then finally, there's my example of waste bins and so on in category 3, which become business as usual. So all we're simply doing is giving the committee, if you like, an insight into how we plan to go about this. There will be then a prioritising exercise of all the many thousands of branded items that will exist, and we hope that just asking you to approve the principle of how we go about this with the recommendations at section 3. Thank you, Jim.
Any comments, Phil? You're on mute, Phil.
Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted myself. Sorry. One of my big issues has always been West Northamptonshire as an identity, and who knows where it is. And you know, I think this is great. We've got the logo. We've now got to go and use it and promote ourselves. And I was just wondering where, for example, road signs fit into this, because, you know, as I drive down the A34 and I come to a sign saying welcome to West Berkshire, for example, at least I know where West Berkshire is when I travel into it. Will we be putting up road signs on the major entrances to West Northamptonshire as quite a priority in order to give us that area of identity, or identify the area of West Northamptonshire? Thank you, Chair.
Not entirely sure, not considered. I think we would consider that category 2. In other words, it is proactive rebrand, day 2 onwards, items that need to be proactively rebranded. And it may be ahead of when the need arises. I'm not sure whether there is a way of doing that around existing signage that in a high quality way, a vinyl or whatever, might modernise that logo. I'm not sure. But I think you make a really good point, Phil, and we know that putting this council on the map and establishing the area, which doesn't have a sort of city name so people can point to it on the map, I think that's really, really important as part of our sort of inward investment and economic development aspirations. And as part of that, knowing that you have arrived is important. So I haven't got the direct answer, but I think what you highlighted is a priority, which I sense probably others would agree with. So I'll take that up.
On the M1 at least.
Adam, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, yes, you did, Chairman. I think it's an interesting point, and I think it's one that's worthy of further consideration before we make any firm decisions on it. Because, of course, I think many people will not want to lose the sense of the ceremonial county of Northamptonshire, and the fact that that identity will still be one that people identify with, and in some senses, especially if we think of the police force and other institutions, will still exist on some levels. But I firmly agree that we do need to establish a West Northamptonshire identity to drive that investment, to put ourselves on the map, as Phil and Jonathan have said. But I just want to be cautious in not forgetting that Northamptonshire as a ceremonial county will still exist, not least in the form of our fine county cricket club just up the road from my house.
Can I suggest that we put one somewhere in the track at Silverstone Circuit, and the next time there's a Grand Prix, it'll get global coverage, because every time you would complete a lap, you go in and out of the county. So you could have one on either side where you leave and where you come back in. There was one point within the rebrand that I noticed, and I can't remember the exact location. I think it was 5.2.25, but I could be completely wrong on that. It said about within 5 years, we would hope there will be nothing with the old branding on it. And whilst I think that's a reasonable aspiration for possibly signage and well, all sorts of stationery and marketing items, but I wouldn't want to just say, well, we're going to change all the bins because they've all got legacy logos on them. Given that by my calculation, there's probably the thick end of 1 million receptacles to hold rubbish at various parts across the geography. I think things like street furniture, even if it does have a logo of a legacy council, it's almost part of the local history. In the same way as you see a post box that might say Victoria, Regina, or George, and you certainly see plenty of covers that say GPO on them and not British Telecom. So they're all part of our local and social history. So I'm happy enough to see that, but I don't want to be having a hard and fixed policy that says we're going to oversticker logos on bins. If a bin is perfectly serviceable and is 10 years old, well, again, I'm quite sure residents won't really mind as long as it gets emptied on the day that we said it would.
I'd agree with that, Ian. Actually, I'm not sure it needs an amendment in the report, because actually the more active stuff will be done, and in about 5 years' time, someone may recognise that deadline and say that's a superfluous deadline. It'll be a future decision, won't it? When we get as far as looking at changing anything that's still out there, I'd agree with you. It's all part of the historic legacy, really.
Yeah. So 12B, I'm just checking the recommendations. So there's a lot of recommendations. It's recommended that we note the contents of the paper, grant delegated authority to the transformation directors and corporate board in consultation with the West Comms Engagement Task and Finish Group for approval of spend for the rebranding, critical for day one, from the FN Communications and Engagement Project rebranding budget, approve the proposed criteria for implementation of new branding, including cost, timetables, responsibility as set out in categories 1, 2, and 3. Clearly agree category 1 items are to be rebranded to be safe and legal for day one. And then E, if there are non-essential items suggested for day one rebranding in addition to category 1 items, to assist with cultural change and customer need, that they get included. And finally, approves the principle that items which require proactive rebranding post day one will become business as usual and will be funded by the services themselves. Are we agreed on all of those recommendations? Any against? Okay. So last item on the agenda then, item 13, assets, capital schemes, reserves notification, Chester Farm. Can we have the abridged version, please?
Yeah.
Are you introducing this one, Lizzie?
I am indeed. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Please don't start with the Romans and work forward, or Iron Age man or Bronze Age man or wherever.
You, Ian. I was going to show you some slides, but I think
have we got slides?
I've got slides, but bearing in the time, what I thought I'd do is cover what I've got to say, so that you can hopefully endorse that. And then if there's time afterwards and you want to, those that want to see the slides can, but people like Richard and Matt and Fiona have already seen them. So anybody that's not interested could go off, and I won't be offended if everybody turns their screen off at that stage. Okay, fair enough. Yep. So
depends how many are Bake Off fans.
Yes, exactly. I better be
it's
quick.
The final at 8 o'clock, isn't it?
Final. Okay, right. Okay, well, I'll be as quick as I can. Right, so you've got 3 papers, 2 of which were presented to Cabinet, and you're probably wondering, well, why were 2 different papers presented to Cabinet? Because this is very much a moving feast at the moment, and we are still trying to tie down all the finances, so it is moving very fast. In addition to that, you have the the asset capital scheme report, which I have to go through the recommendations of, which I'll do in a moment. Just for clarity, Chester Farm is now called Chester House Estates because the business plan has been modified and improved and is based on the Chatsworth House model. So that is a huge, not a huge change, but it is a change. It's a very positive change. And had we not had COVID, then we would have having to be changing our business plan anyway. So this is a particular interest to the North because the responsibility for this will lie in the North, but there are obviously significant funds that are at the moment being decided by the Sovereign Authority, which is NCC. You know that the history of this, and I'm not going to go into the archaeological history, Ian, but the history of this dates back to 2002, when it was known as Chester Farm and when it was bought by the county. Those of that you've been around a lot longer than myself and a few others on the screen will remember that this has been back and forwards to Cabinet. I don't know how many times, but gosh, at least 15, I would suggest. It's an 85-acre plot, and just in terms of location is between Wellingborough and Rushton Lakes, just on the left-hand side there. It's a complex basically of listed buildings and farmland. And in terms of its importance, it's a site of SSI, Heritage Archaeological, and NCC, just in case you're wondering, has a statutory responsibility to preserve this site. And decisions were made in Cabinet, again before my time, that meant that the Heritage Lottery Fund, which bequeathed £4 million at that time in 2013, there is a cut-off of July 2021. Help me out there, Kerry, where we had to decide whether or not we're going to go ahead with this or hand the money back. So that's £4 million. The decision was made to go ahead with this. So we've been, since then, we've, Shayla, the contractor, went into liquidation. We then subsequently went through a fusion process to find another contractor, and we failed in that process on March the 20th of this year. Basically because nobody actually satisfied the fusion process framework. That meant we had to then go out again with a new business plan to tender to find a contractor, and we're now at the final stages of securing a contract with a go live date, all being well, to start either end of December, beginning of January. Okay, in terms of timeframes, the idea is that the ARC will open sometime during the beginning of February, that we will get as much of this open by the beginning of May so that we can really shout about this in the elections, and that the final bits and pieces will be open by October, so we don't miss another season, because every year that this is closed means lost income to NCC. So in terms of the recommendations, very quickly, there are a number of those, but if I go to the recommendations number 3, the media launch will now start post national restrictions, whenever that is. The uplift of the budget for the bond, just on a technical point, the bond is something that was agreed that when Shayla went into liquidation, they owe us that money, so NCC haven't had to pay that. The uplift from a capital budget, that is more of a technical situation rather than asking NCC or anybody else for more money. And the uplift from the Heritage Lottery Grant Fund, we will not know until the 19th of December. And if we don't get that extra money from the Heritage Lottery Fund grant, we will not be able to complete all the phases of this development. So we're waiting to hear on that. Does anybody have any questions? No?
No, I see Adam's hand up. Is that a question?
Sorry,
yeah,
Adam. Yeah, sorry, I've tried
He's not going to let you away scot-free.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think most of us, if not all of us, know the long and potted history of Chester Farm. It's a simple enough question to Councillor Bowen. Is she convinced that that the taxpayer's getting value for money from all of this?
So I can't look back on what has been spent. I can only look forward. And I know from the moment that I took over with Kerry in terms of leading this project, that you will be getting value for money on this and more. We have slogged our guts out on this to try, and I can tell you now, we're still working on fine tuning the budget. So from when Kerry and I went, I can assure you, you have got more than value for money.
Right. So the last million spent is the most value for money. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I just want to support Lizzie in this and point out and highlight the good work that Lizzie's done. She's really gripped this up and driven it, and you know, it does go back to parts of the past and some of the reasons, you know, should it have ever gone ahead in the first place. But I think it's a really good project now, and it's in good shape. And there's actually a video that I've seen featuring Lizzie that really brings it to life, and I would suggest that when that's ready, that's circulated, because it really does show what's going to be involved there, because it's more than just the farm on the edge of the dual carriageway. I think it will be a real good asset for the whole of the county. There's all the educational elements to it, and you know, all the tourism opportunities. So it is, I think it is a good project that should benefit both west and north for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
And it will be the county-wide repository for archaeological artefacts, of which West Northampton will be benefiting.
Absolutely, and it will be one of the most significant sites in the country, so we will all benefit from it, both educationally, archaeologically, and also many other aspects as well. Just before Teresa comes on, Paul, would you just get those slides ready so that we can quickly whip through them? Okay. And Teresa wants to speak.
Yes,
might make it 8 o'clock at this rate.
Chair, if I may come in, if that's okay.
Yeah, crack on.
Thank you. Yeah, just to reinforce firstly the point that Lizzie's made, that certainly since Kerry has taken over this project and Lizzie's got involved, I've seen a massive amount of progress, probably more progress than we'd seen there or anyone had seen there in the previous years and years. And it's really encouraging to see what's now been produced, and we have a really good manager there as well. It is quite a fantastic site now, and I would suggest as soon as lockdown is over and people can mix properly and safely, that as many of you go and visit as possible, because it is very impressive. But I'm sure the video and the slides will show you some of that in terms of the new build, and that's not even to mention the historic bits. The point I was really going to make was it is a money burner now, and it has taken quite a lot of investment, but the major part of the investment was made long before my time and before any of us could have changed that situation. So it does make sense to complete the project. I have absolutely no doubt it will make a profit in years to come, probably not too far down the line. Where it's located, the fact that you could bring river taxis and everything to it, it will make a profit, and the West will share in that profit, as it is a county-owned asset. It's been invested county-wide, so therefore the profit should be shared county-wide. So, I would keep a close eye on it if I were you. I would make sure you visit and take an interest in it. It is going to be a really good project if it continues on the trajectory it's on, with the amount of commitment and investment that we've seen from both Councillor Bowen and from Kerry. I think we have a worthy asset in the county, worthy of note, and I think it will be profitable, more importantly.
So very quickly, Paul, can we get those slides up? Right, okay, so that's the logo. Moving on, we'll just go through slowly. Oh, that's probably a bit quick. Okay, yeah, so this is, here you've got the ark with all the storage for all of the archaeological items, if you like. Carry on down, Paul. You've got an eatery there in the front. You've got lots of shops, beautiful shops. You've got pop-up shops going there. You've got plenty of eating space for visitors to come and again. This is in the farmhouse. This is one of the dining areas within the farmhouse. You can see beautiful oak panelling. There was questions over why it was all oak panelling, but it's beautiful now, and we'll make sure that it's beautiful going forward once it's been revamped. Next one. Get a bit more of the farmhouse. Next one. Okay, so you've got your small animals. We can't have large animals, but looking down that drive, if you like, that walkway, is the farmhouse, the old farmhouse. You've got lots of buildings to the right, and then lots of artisan shops to the left. Moving on. Okay, so you've got a museum here, and we are looking for museum status. There will be a lot of school visits. There will be a lot of university visits. There will be university digs. There will be placements for university students, sixth form students, Malton College, University College London. I could go on and on and on about this. There is so much that's going to go on here, and I think this is just the start. Keep going on. Okay, so you've got your your usual deli thing. Next one. Okay, so this is going to be a wedding venue site as well. We will have 2 wedding venue sites. One which will be more of a pop-up, but then you've got one of the oldest buildings, which is going to provide a beautiful site for weddings. And obviously market assessments at the moment is that there is going to be huge demand from next year onwards for weddings, particularly those that have had to put them back. Next slide. Inside, this lovely, lovely threshing barn. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's stunning, but not just weddings, any sorts of events as well. And finally, which is my favourite slide, I think. No, not quite. Oh, so there'll be festivals here. There'll be all sorts of different types of events here. I mean, you name it, we will try and offer it. Next slide. Okay, this is my favourite slide. So you've got the Nen River there. You've got your bridges. You've got your moorings, so people will be able to moor up, be able to walk up through the fields. And they can come and obviously go to the restaurant, to the shops, to the museum, etc. Or they can use this as an area to go walking. There's the lake over in the far corner there, cycling all the way from Wellingborough all the way up to Oundle. And that's it. Thank you. That's almost at just 8 o'clock. I think it might be a little bit later. So I've whizzed through that, but happy to share those slides and we'll be happy to share the video with you. That's it.
Thank you. So the recommendation.
So I've gone through the recommendations. So
yeah, please move the recommendations.
I have already gone through those. So if everybody's happy to endorse those recommendations.
Yeah. So are we happy to endorse those? Any against? Okay, that is carried. So item matters reference from the Shadow Authority. We don't have any. We have no items of urgent business. So I shall close the meeting at 8:01. Thank you all for your time. Our next meeting, I don't think is until January, isn't it? Sorry, I think. Sorry, I thought there was some background noise.
Chair, do you have a budget meeting in December, or have I misunderstood that? Just checking.
I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure I read on the paperwork that our next meeting wasn't until January.
Next meeting is the 5th of January.
5th of January, yeah. That's what I thought.
You.
But there might be a budget meeting in between, but if there is that, due notice will be given.
Yeah.
So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you all again. Good night.
Thank you.